Welcome to Stories of Safety, brought to you by the Safety Supply Company. My name is Natalee Harrigan. I'm an occupational safety and health practitioner here in Barbados, and I'm pleased to introduce to you today my colleague, Shaina Goodridge.
So, hi, I'm Shaina, as you said, and I'm a registered engineer, also certified safety professional with the Board of Certified Safety Professionals.
Shaina, the average person probably hears safety professional or occupational safety and health practitioner, and they have no idea what that means. They don't know what we do. Let's enlighten them a bit.
There are safety professionals that exist in every realm across the world. So we have safety professionals working in the regulatory sphere, where they would be developing the legislation for persons to follow. We have industry leaders who will be developing best practices, and then we have the ones that are working within the individual organizations, providing or lending expertise to management, ensuring that they are doing what they need to do to maintain the occupational safety and health within the working environment.
And the field of occupational safety health is really just about making sure people are safe at work and that their work environment doesn't cause them any harm and there's no harm caused to others by the work that they do. Now, in our field, what do you find are some of the challenges that we experience in terms of exercising that particular mandate?
Yes, indeed. One of the main challenges that I would have observed is that persons tend to think that safety and health is somebody else's responsibility. It's the responsibility of the safety professional only, or it's the responsibility of the labor department or the regulatory agency to ensure that the safety and health is maintained. But that is certainly not the case because everybody has a personal responsibility. Okay, so you have to ensure as a member of staff that you're doing what you're supposed to do, that you go to any training that is provided so that you know how to do your job safely and properly. You have a responsibility to make sure that any equipment that you're using, that you check and that you communicate to your management team if there are any challenges. And then also, as you're traversing your work compound, if you see that there's something that is out of place that could potentially pose a hazard to yourself or to your colleagues, you also have to say something. And within Barbados, that's actually part of the law. You have to indicate whether you find something that is out of place within your working environment. You can't just say, well, somebody else is going to fix it or whatever. Everybody has a part to play. The other thing that I notice is that persons in management tend to focus on the bottom line only. Okay, so they may be looking at just how much productivity we can have, what profit can we make, but they're seeing safety as a secondary function, right? It's not part of the core. So oftentimes as a safety professional, or if the safety committee comes and brings a concern or brings a recommendation, the initial thought is this thing is going to cost too much money, or I'm just not interested in that. That's something we could do later. Oftentimes they don't think about the potential savings that they can reap by implementing these changes or addressing the issues. As a safety professional, you're mostly concerned with minimizing injuries. You don't want anybody to come to work and leave in a worse condition than they came, right? The safety professional's job is not to go out there and say, let me see how much money I can make them spend, right? That's not it, even though that's what they think, right? We are looking to ensure that we're doing everything as safely as possible. We're making sure that persons do not get injured when they're doing anything. We don't incur any losses of product, no damage to the plant, to the property, to our equipment. All of that we look at, right? So the losses that you could eliminate by doing the correct thing oftentimes will add to what your net profit is going to be, rather than you ignore all of those things and you make $10 million and then you have to spend $7 or $8 million because of the losses that you would have incurred as a result of downtime, reputational loss, loss of labor because persons are off work, paying out money for injuries and all of that.
So we really do have similar experiences, Shaina. And one term that I hate to hear is safety police. It makes me feel like we're the enemy when the truth is we're not. And in a role that we have that's really about people and protecting people, to be treated as the enemy is a bit tough. A lot of times I would come and try to offer a solution, or I would try to work together on a solution. And the attitude is, you figure it out. Safety is your responsibility, it's not my responsibility. But that's something that we are working to change by educating people. Consultation is something that we spoke about in one of our other episodes. The importance of involving employees in what is done at work. There shouldn't be a case where there's a particular hazard in your workplace and you have no idea. You have the right to know what you're exposing yourself to, and you have the right to know the measures that are being placed to protect you from that harm.
Safety rules apply to everybody. I agree with you 110%. 150%.
150%.
Yeah.
100 million
Safety rules
percent. Because the thing is, we're messing with the spirit of it when we just decide that you do it one time and not the other. Yes, the likelihood that something is going to fall and hit your head, you may think is low, but think of the severity of the harm that it should occur. That same special visitor that you don't want to make feel uncomfortable, don't you also want to protect them? Suppose they become injured when they come on the job site. And I have to tell you, it is really difficult to watch safety professionals work so hard, put measures in place, and then get undermined by the people above them.
And this is a challenge that is prevalent across the country and across the world, because persons may think because of their particular position within the organization that certain rules don't apply to them. But the rules apply to everybody. And the rules have to be enforced, and there has to be accountability for when these rules are not followed.
We can link that back to productivity, because you and I know that most of the time the best way for us to get things done is to talk about the dollars and cents. You would like to think that everybody's going to do things because it's the right thing to do, is the moral thing to do, but you can relate these things back to dollars and cents. And you don't follow those rules, that's showing disrespect towards your employees. And do employees that are disrespected work well? Are they productive? Are they innovative?
So, what you said is so true. It's incredibly important to have a positive safety culture within the organization, because statistics show that when the safety culture is poor, it negatively impacts on productivity, employee morale. So, when all of these things combine together, the end result is reduced profit, right?
And we're using a term here that the viewers might not be familiar with, safety culture. That's really how people think and feel about health and safety, and how it translate into their behaviors, the values that they hold. So good safety culture versus bad safety culture. Good safety culture looks like following the law, having good policies and procedures, safe systems of work, providing personal protective equipment for your employees. It's not just making good rules, but also following them. It's consulting your employees. Don't say as an employer, I already know the best thing to do. These employees, they don't know much. They just need to follow instructions. That's not good. It's not productive. It's not safe, and it's not productive. Because the people on the front lines, and Shaina, I'm sure you'd agree, the people on the front lines, they have the solutions. A lot of times as a safety professional, I will know at a high level what's right and what's wrong.
It's incredibly important for engagement to take place. We don't ever work in a silo. A lot of times people may feel that the safety professional will just sit in an office and come up with some random rule and try to implement it, but that's not how that's not how it should work. Right? You should be engaging with the rank and file employees, the persons who are in the trenches doing what they're supposed to do. You engage with middle management, who are responsible for making sure that things are carried out, and you engage with senior management, who are responsible for the strategy for the organization and the organization's growth. So you have to interface with all of these persons so that everybody is on the same page. It can't be that you don't engage with the employees or management, because then nothing is going to get done. People will continue to operate in a silo, and you're there, screaming into the wind, right? So it's incredibly important that when the safety professional is asking or pleading for this engagement, it is not to add something to somebody's plate or to take them away from what they think their core function is. It's to make that function work better. to make it more efficient, make it safer, reduce losses, reduce injuries to employees, which at the end of the day, you're going to have better productivity and then more money is going to be coming in.
The audience may be listening to us and thinking, no, one, this health and safety thing has a lot of challenges. Is there anything positive going on? Or two, you might be thinking, okay, I want to make things better. What can I do? I'd say there are positive things going on. For example, there are more health and safety professionals in Barbados now. There are a lot of people that you can reach out to. The knowledge is increasing. The Labor Department is educating the public. There's also a lot more equipment available. Many times we have challenges in terms of what is available on island, but there is a lot more that we have to work with now. In terms of technology, I know that that's an area that you're interested in, Shaina. What would you say are some of the improvements in technology that have perhaps made our job easier, but also things that we need to be aware of?
Okay. So we certainly have an improvement in the access to these cloud-based tools that allow us to improve our equipment inspections and our physical inspections of the locations. These tools allow significantly better tracking of trends. It allows you to have immediate notification of challenges, especially if you're managing an organization that has multiple locations or you have multiple areas of responsibility. You may be physically located in one place, but you can be made immediately aware of any challenges that arise at somewhere else that you're not physically located at. And the access to these tools, as I mentioned, allows you to do significantly better trending, because before, when everything was paper-based, you yourself would know that auditing would be
Tough.
so challenging. You've got mountains and mountains of paper you got to go and dig through, and it's not, number one, nobody wants to do that. Number two, it's incredibly tedious and taxing, and because you have to physically look at something and then gather the data from it, you now have to input it into some database. There's errors in transposing that data, and you vex because it's taking forever, and it's very taxing and not at all very efficient.
Shaina, I'm going to say two words and I want you to tell me what comes to mind. What comes to mind when you hear freak accident?
So when I hear the term freak accident, I think of something that is incredibly rare, and it's something that happens as a result, not as a result of negligence on anybody's part. But the fact remains that freak accidents are so rare. Mm-hmm. Right? These might be things that were caused by an act of God, something that you are unable to control. So these are few and far between. But I find that persons use the term very loosely within the industry. They try to pass off a lot of incidents that were actually avoidable as freak accidents, and that's not correct. Right? A lot of times there are things that we or the persons could have done differently to reduce the risk and prevent these things from happening.
Yeah, because when you started to answer there, to be honest, I felt a little concerned. I thought that you weren't going the right direction with this one. Because when I hear freak accident, I hear, oh, there was nothing that could have been done about that. It's regrettable that happened, but it was just bad luck. But as safety professionals, we know that there's a reason this happened. And like you said, there was negligence. But it's to get to the underlying causes, the root causes. Unfortunately, we've had some high-profile cases recently in terms of accidents happening, even fatalities. And the response of the public is interesting. And that was unlucky. This person shouldn't have done that. But we know that it's not productive to blame an individual. Apart from the human error, there are systems in the background that as safety professionals we design to keep people safe and to eliminate that aspect of human error. So for example, we were talking about safety culture. You can have a rule which says that you are always supposed to wear your gloves, but in practicality, nobody ever wears their gloves. So that becomes part of the culture, and supervisors see people not wearing the gloves and they don't say anything. So in fact, was it the operator's fault that he was not wearing the gloves? Or was it that it became common practice and acceptable for the gloves not to be worn?
Mhm. So in that scenario, everybody has a level of responsibility. The person who is the operator would have been trained, and they would
Hopefully, they have been trained.
that's true. They should have been trained, and they should know that to execute this particular function, they need to be wearing this set of PPE, which would be the gloves in that instance, right?
Shaina, I want to jump in a second just on the point of training, because I find something that we get wrong here is we hire a person and we say the person comes in with these qualifications. They must be able to do X, Y, and Z. I don't need to teach them this. They're a big person. They must know what to do. But as a responsible employer, the employer needs to make sure that the person has the necessary information, instruction, and training to do their job right. So don't just hire a person and send them to work and say, hey, this person went to school, they must know. We have a responsibility to train and supervise.
Absolutely. We can't assume that persons know or that they will remember. And once we are recruiting them to execute a particular function, we have to ensure that we communicate to them what the expectations are, right? So we have a responsibility, the organizations have a responsibility to make sure that persons are properly trained and that this training is done before you ask this person to start to do the task. You don't send the person to do the task and then 2 years later send them to do training. What can happen in them 2 years, right? So you have to, I think there's a lot that can be done to improve how we manage training within the organizations. It's so often it's seen as something that's secondary and unnecessary, but no, it isn't. Think about all of the things that could go wrong when you bring in some untrained person and ask them to execute a function. This person is now becoming familiar with your operation. They're not aware of all of the risks and hazards that exist there. So they put themselves, unbeknownst to them, right in the middle of danger, and they're not thinking about that, and it's not really through any fault of their own because it wasn't communicated to them. So many organizations can definitely improve on that by making sure that there's a proper induction that is done, letting people know what are the risks associated with this particular location, and then specific to the task that they're being assigned, let them know what are the risks associated with that and what are the measures that they will be expected to follow and the systems that have been put in place to make sure that they can work safely. And enforcement is also required. A person can't be hired and just told something in 5 minutes and then expected to remember immediately. There must be some follow-up by the person who is responsible for them.
Oh, you mean reinforcement?
Yes,
because when you said
reinforcement.
enforcement, I thought you were getting to the disciplinary aspect of it, which I think is also important.
So reinforcement at first, yes,
Yes.
and then there has to be enforcement further down the road if you find that either the person is not complying or that their supervisor is lax in ensuring that they're following the rules. So there has to be accountability in that.
I know we were supposed to go on to the positive things, but another thing that just came to mind, sometimes employees are rewarded for being unsafe. And that is a huge challenge. When we put productivity over safety, short term, it may seem like a good idea, but long term, it never works out. And it seems as though we're on a journey that perhaps all mankind has to go through. Just thinking about where safety was 50 years ago, 100 years ago with the Industrial Revolution and how it is now. People tend to think that safety is natural, is common sense, but it's really not. It's something that we need to devote energy to developing the systems, to learning more, investing in it.
I agree with you. There needs to be a certain level of communication, which we're actually seeing now with the improvement in social media and persons speaking about the issues that exist.
Like we said before, the Labor Department, they're putting things out there in the press that's very helpful. And there's generally a lot more information available. There's this series that we're watching here today.
I find that there's so many persons who are becoming more influential in the sphere. We're not only looking to the regulatory agencies as the ones to get this information from, but you've got industry professionals who are coming out and sharing the information in a way that is easy to understand and easy to engage with, and that's what you need. What we find is that if persons are getting information and it's interesting to them, they start to pay attention and it will start to register. So I think if we keep doing what we're doing, we can see a positive improvement. We certainly have seen some improvement. We've got more safety professionals working in the industries. We've got more persons or more organizations actually having safety committees and engaging the employees in the management of safety and health at their locations. And that's amazing. We didn't have that like
No,
10 years
no, we
ago.
didn't.
We didn't have that. So there are some improvements that we have to be proud of, you know? So we're getting there. There's still a lot of work to be done. So we can get a pick. Right. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but I'm certain that we can get where we need to go because we're doing quite well.
To know where we're going, sometimes we really need to sit down and look at the past. With respect to accidents and incidents, even near misses, it's important, and we know this, it's important as safety professionals not just to say, I get away. You need to not just ignore what happened, but look and see what the cause was. Because the only thing that saved a life or prevented an injury was that factor that we like to refer to as luck. What happens when the luck runs out? If the same sequence of events had happened, but given a slight shift in time or space, somebody could have been seriously injured. So what do you find are some of the common root causes or even underlying causes of accidents? From my perspective, I've seen training is oftentimes a root cause. There's complacency based on what we mentioned before, with being told one thing and seeing another thing happen. But I just wanted to give you a chance to weigh in on that.
So I see definitely training is one, the lack of training. And then that, to my mind, is a component of lack of proper planning for activities. So many times, the organization may be trying to do a particular activity and it's not properly thought out. There is inadequate communication around the expectations for this activity. It's almost as though people are given an objective without a clear map on how to get there. So
the safe system of work, how are we going to do this thing?
Exactly. And because that information is not readily available, everybody does what they feel like or what they think is the right thing to do. And in some cases, it's not. So we have persons doing things that are competing and somebody's going to end up getting hurt. So if there is an improvement in the planning process and you have a proper project plan in place that's communicated properly and everybody's aware, you have proper monitoring of the project, proper feedback and so on, so everybody remains on the same page and you can identify what challenges have arisen and how you can address them and communicate this out to everyone, things will run a little bit more smoothly or a lot more smoothly.
Well, thank you so much, Shaina. It was a pleasure having you here.
You're so welcome.
This has been Stories of Safety, brought to you by the Safety Supply Company. Thank you for watching.